and the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. The letter affirms, and I quote, that Chinese from Huawei Technologies is bidding to supply equipment to Sprint Nextel, and that lawyers retained by the company are currently working with the Treasury Department to allow it to operate in the United States. The letter continues to state that Huawei's position as a supplier of Sprint Nextel could create substantial risk for the United States companies and possibly undermine U.S. national security. I guess it dawned on some in Washington that we should be concerned if the equipment made by the Chinese companies of Huawei and ZTE were installed across America's cell phone grid, which could secretly be programmed for spying on all Americans. What is curious about this letter is that it never mentions that the Republican governor, Rick Snyder, runs the company financing NeoPhotonics, and that he therefore is the money behind the technology this international partnership of companies may be trying to use to spy on the people of the United States. The basis of the letter comes from the proposal deal in which Sprint Cellular would install equipment from the Chinese companies of Huawei and ZTE on next-generation cell phone towers across the United States. In his video, Vince Wade pointed out that in a 2008 press release, Governor Rick Snyder's business partner, NeoPhotonics, had noted that Huawei had given them the top award for quality and customer support. Mr. Wade also pointed out that in spring of 2010, another press release by NeoPhotonics was published stating that it had achieved core partner status with Huawei. In regards to Mr. Bill Kaufman, 14 years ago in 1997, Dr. Kaufman and his wife were sincerely welcomed to spend 40 days in mainland China. More recently, in October 2006, Dr. Kaufman clearly felt that his concerns about the university practices were being ignored. So he set about using his own international visa to attend China's annual air show in Zhuhai, where he intended to do some looking around himself for stolen American aviation and propulsion technology. However, 36 hours before his scheduled departure, Dr. Kaufman was dragged from his U of M office in handcuffs and placed under arrest, without a warrant, by a University of Michigan campus cop who informed him that we do not want you going to China. Now, he wasn't talking about the campus police when he said we. He was talking instead about University of Michigan President Mary Sue Coleman and her administrative cohorts at the Board of Regents. In that 2006 incident, Dr. Kaufman was threatened, accosted, and taken away to jail. Though now, 5 years later, Dr. Kaufman has yet to find a proper settlement to his being falsely imprisoned, and Mary Sue Coleman has yet to answer for the undermining of all of Dr. Kaufman's data gathering plans. Here we are 5 years later, and Dr. Kaufman is still being ignored. Like others I have spotlighted on my Power Corrupts Again program, Dr. Kaufman has been to Michigan law enforcement and he has appeared before Michigan judges. Yet each time he continues to be dismissed by these so-called public officials who otherwise appear to be consistently acting enterprisingly on behalf of themselves and their cohorts. Of course, I call it racketeering and corruption, and so far nobody in office will listen to me either. In any event, it should be noted that during World War II, the British newspaper coined a term to describe the types of activities being demonstrated today by this University of Michigan President Coleman, the University of Michigan Board of Regents, the Senator Carl Levin, and by the Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, who is, by the way, an alumnus of University of Michigan. The term long ago was Quisling, named after Norwegian Vidkun Quisling, who assisted Nazi Germany after the Nazis had conquered his own country, so that he could himself become a ruler in the collaborationist Norwegian government. The term historically was most commonly used in reference to fascism, and the collaboration between political parties, the military, and the paramilitary forces. Tragically, in today's time, the term might be better used to reference those of the corporate and the government elite who, like World War II traitors, persist in acting treasonously in their own best interest or in the collective interest of private shareholders rather than in the greater interest of we the people of this once great nation. It's people like this who are the subject of this show, the ones who are selling out America to the highest bidder, which in this case, of more recent years, has been the communist nation of the People's Republic of China.
Well, I think when Defense Secretary Gates was in China, or when he first came back, he made the point that the United States was going to have to restart a lot of weapons programs that they had previously stopped because of the advancements in the capabilities of the Chinese military. So when you think about how much money is that going to cost us as United States taxpayers, there's going to be billions of dollars trying to keep up with the capabilities of the Chinese military. He also said that that their cruise missile technology and their anti-ship ballistic missiles were a threat to our aircraft carriers, and we were going to have to invest billions of dollars in countermeasures for those as well.
Well, and about what, or maybe more than that, about that missile that went off the coast of California, seemed to be going out of nowhere, and you know, it was in the news, but only briefly.
Yeah, that happened about 4 months ago, I think, and people say, well, it was an airplane contrail viewed from some strange angle, but when I looked at that contrail, it was clearly the contrail from a rocket, because at the end of the contrail there was a light source, like the nozzles on the rocket. And also the contrail itself appeared to be smoke and not water vapor. And smoke comes from the combustion of solid propellants. So I would choose that it was a sea-launched ballistic missile from a Chinese submarine in international waters. And they were just shooting it off to show that they could do it.
Right. That we can sneak up on you too, right off the coast of California here, and that happened right about the same time that we had the problems that were going on between North and South Korea. I believe that we had a battleship that was sent into the Yellow Sea about that time, and this might have been a little message from China to say, you know.
Also, you have to wonder how much the civilian government in China has control over the military, because when Gates was in China recently and they tested their new J-20 fighter, apparently Hu Jintao didn't even know that they were testing it.
That's the president, right?
That's the president. That's the president of their civilian government. So the control of the military is not, you know, we're not quite sure who is in control of the Chinese military.
Well, and as we were talking a little bit during that quick break here, I mean, we've got so many things that we don't know about. You know, some of these things here that are being that China is getting privy to. You know, and the American public it's horrendous.
Well, we've tried to give some thought to how do you actually, you know, come up with solutions, and in terms of the loss of technology from universities. One of the things is that the universities, like, you know, if you take, for example, University of Michigan, you know, will train their scientists on how to avoid import-export restrictions. And so the University of Michigan uses a loophole that's for what they call fundamental research. So if what you're discovering can be considered fundamental research, then you don't have to get an import or export permit. But the same technologies that they're calling fundamental research, they're putting patents on, and they're doing startup companies. And so how is that now a fundamental research? So if you think in terms of a solution, the universities until about I think 30 years ago were not allowed to profit from patenting federally funded research. And then there was the Birch-Dole Act, which then said even if it's federally funded, the universities can own the intellectual property from research that's been federally funded. And so since then, there's been tremendous emphasis on technology transfer and startup companies and this sort of thing. Universities don't want to give that up. Okay, I think that if you amended the Birch-Dole Act so that you essentially told the university, if you're going to call it fundamental research, then you can't patent it. Okay? If you plan to patent it, then it's no longer fundamental research, and if you're going to allow it out of the country, then you need to get import-export permits. So that's a relatively concrete step that one could do, would be relatively easy for our federal legislators to do, and yet, you know, would probably be pretty effective at curtailing some of the technology transfer from universities.
Dr. Coleman?
Well, I mentioned earlier the detonation wave engine that was being developed in China. And in 1994, an American company that's now owned by Pratt & Whitney came and asked us to do research on that area because we had a long history of being able to do research. And the university immediately intervened and asked the company, demanded that the company sign over all patents, royalties, et cetera, all financial returns on an engine that may be developed to the university. And Adroit Systems, the name of the small company, simply walked away and said, no, we're not going to do that, okay? Because we have our own interest, it's our money that's going to develop it, and therefore we should keep it. But the university had its own pecuniary interest and decided they would not do that. And that has happened in other situations too, where, you know, we're talking about developing Michigan businesses. There was a self-locking screw fastener firm in Detroit that wanted to place a contract at the University of Michigan. And again, the university says, yes, you have to assign us all rights. And the company just threw up their hands and said, no, we're not going to do it. So that's hardly a friendly environment when you're the state university and supposed to be helping people. I mean, you know, we should think of ourselves as the Ag Extension Service, extending our hand to the people who need help and do it because we are the state university.
So the University of Michigan is really doing what China's doing to the University of Michigan and any other corporation that goes over there. They're saying, well, you can open up a business here, just share all your technology with us. And while you're here, then help us to build the factories and, you know, all that stuff here. And what the University of Michigan is doing is the same thing to businesses here. And when the businesses don't want to participate, then they're actually stealing it from the professors and other people who are doing the research at the universities.
It's even broader than that. We hear now that we're going to create jobs by exporting to China. That's the new White House team. Well, you can look at the past. The past is prologue. The past is history. It's experience. And what do the Chinese do? They say, well, we want to buy a couple of Manitowoc cranes. Okay, so they buy a couple of Manitowoc cranes. And the next thing they say is, well, we need a factory in China to make spare parts for these cranes. Okay, fine, we'll do that. And the next thing they say, well, we'll buy a couple more cranes, but you have to open up a factory in China that's going to make cranes. And they do that and sell a couple more cranes. And then they come back and say, Manitowoc goes over to China and says, you want to buy some cranes? No, thanks. We know how to make them on our own. And this has happened 100 or 1,000 times. I mean, how stupid and how greedy is the American government and American corporations? When you talk about creating jobs here, it's not by exporting what we know so they can do it and sell it back. We have to create jobs here in America for Americans. And we have American products in the stores. Okay.
If you look at things like Boeing, you know, who wants to sell aircraft to China, they make a deal with China, but China says, you know, we need an offset. Okay. Well, what they mean by an offset is you've got to, as you say, build part of the plane in China, and so then they learn how to do it. Now China is turning around and they're about to begin to market a commercial aircraft that would compete with the Airbus and with some of the Boeing aircraft. So this is happening over and over again. They call them offsets.